Welcome back. President Trump announcing the U.S. has reached a deal to end the conflict in Iran, with the signing of that deal officially coming on Friday in Switzerland. Sources close to the talks telling me the deal includes Iran's acceptance of having no nuclear weapon and an immediate full opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And then, and only then, will the U.S. begin to reverse Iran sanctions and help the country become part of the global economy. Now, members of Congress want to see the specifics of the deal. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham posted this on X. Quote, under our law, any nuclear deal with Iran will be sent to Congress for review and a vote. I look forward to reviewing the final product. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford says Congress should ratify any nuclear deal with the U.S. And what it does with Iran. Joining me now is North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to see you. Thank you, Maria.
So what is your assessment on this deal with Iran, on what you know of it so far, and should it be ratified by Congress?
So on the first part of the question, I know as much as anybody who listens to Fox Business what's in it. Obviously, there are conflicting reports depending on who you're talking to, and that's to be understood. Both sides in this deal have their own politics to consider. Both sides' position. I would hate to be up against Donald Trump in any negotiation, and if I'm confronted with who to believe, I'm going to believe Donald Trump. With regard to the ratification process, I think it is important to note that this is not a treaty. This is an MOU. Treaties have to be ratified by the Senate. MOUs do not. However, Iran is special in the sense that there's the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, which does require a 60-day time frame for Congress to review any type of a deal that's done with Iran. However, 60 days to review is not the same thing as a ratification. But I do think, I agree with Senator Lankford, anything that you want to make durable is best done with a vote by Congress.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. Well, we'll wait to get more details on the deal. Everyone wants to see some transparency here.
Exactly.
But let me get your take on the other business at hand, because you've got the August recess right around the corner, 2 weeks in terms of the legislative days left to get anything done. And we've still got questions about the state of the Clarity Act. Last month, the Senate's version of the digital asset legislation passed out of the Banking Committee, but has not been brought to the floor of the Senate for a full Senate vote. CFTC Chairman Michael Seelig joined me last week. Here's what he said. Watch.
Certainty and clarity. That's why the bill's named Clarity, right? We want to make sure that the United States remains the crypto capital of the world. The president's been very clear on changing the way that we regulate in the United States. We're not regulating by enforcement and opaque rules. We're setting clear rules, but having that in statute is going to be critical. We want to cement that, make sure that the next administration, if it's a Democrat administration that's hostile to crypto like the last one, we want to make sure they can't tear apart all of our rules. We want the United States to lead on crypto, and this statute's going to help us do it.
Senator, what do you think? Are you going to be able to get this done before the recess? I mean, I can't imagine that the Senate takes up clarity before the July 4th recess, frankly. I mean, when you look at all the issues, I mean, the bill permits stable coin rewards, but not interest. The banks view this as inadequate, as there are ways to offer yields and be compliant. And I spoke with Jamie Dimon recently. I know you saw that interview. Here's what he said about the Clarity Act. Watch this. Are you happy with the way the Clarity Act is turning out?
No, because it allows them to effectively pay interest on deposits, stable coins or something like that, without the protection that they should have. And it doesn't do anything for AML/BSA. It has almost no legal protections. So no, the banks will not accept it that way.
They won't accept
the ABA, the small banks, the credit unions, it's not just the big guys. I'm not worried about stablecoin, but if it happened, I'm telling you, I would have nothing to do with it, and it would eventually blow up on its own. Okay, but that's my personal thing. But I do understand the concern of all the other banks. So,
well, the markup is coming. I mean, what are you going to do about it?
It is. We'll fight it. If we lose, we lose, and we'll live.
Yeah. Okay.
But it will be fought. This will not be. No one's going to bow down to this guy, okay, or that company. And he's the only one.
Yeah.
And he's spending hundreds of millions of dollars in Washington in this thing.
Okay? He said he's representing the whole industry.
Full of
Senator, what do you think?
Well, I think it's noble of Jamie Dimon to look out for all the little guys, but the reality is that every time we add a regulation, the crypto side says too much, and every time we don't add one, the banks say, well, it's not fair, and I get that. There are two sides. I frankly listen to everybody. At the end of the day, however, I think just as your previous segment on AI, crypto's the same thing. If the United States doesn't lead with our values and our light touch regulatory regime, then this industry is going to go offshore. We have to be at the forefront of this. So I don't give anybody else the veto power over my vote, but we do have to get it right. And I don't think it's quite there. I'm with you. I don't see how we get it done before July 4th recess for sure. Perhaps after the July 4th recess before August, but even that's going to be a heavy lift. But we're very close. It's just that those last couple of things are difficult to get done. But we did pass it with a bipartisan vote out of the committee, and there are Democrats that want to get on board once we deal with a couple of things like ethics and some of the illicit finance rules that we have to get straightened out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look, we're talking about the rewards issue.
That's right.
But that's not the only issue holding this up, right? Democrats want to ban government employees, including the president and his family, from crypto endeavors. The president's not going to back that. We know that. Law enforcement interests are raising objections to some provisions related to money laundering as well.
Right. Yeah, that's true, and we want to take care of the money laundering piece of it. I think we've done a pretty good job of it. Maybe we have to tighten things up a little bit more with regard to the ethics piece of it. One of the things that Democrats are never going to accept, and that is that we have a business person as the president of the United States. He didn't come up through the ranks. He wasn't a state legislator or a bureaucrat or even a member of Congress. They're always going to have extra scrutiny on the Trump family, but we shouldn't not move forward with pro-growth, pro-business policies just because it might benefit the president's family because they're in business. I mean, they're largely in the White House because they're successful business people. So I sort of reject that whole idea that somehow Donald Trump has to be exempt from being successful.
Well, a lot of people are rejecting the idea that the Senate will not move Save America forward. I mean, look, I know that you've got a lot, on your plate in the Senate, but this is an 80-20 issue. Americans want to know that our elections are secure. How come we can't get this over the finish line? And I know the Senate Intelligence Committee is also holding a confirmation hearing this week for Jay Clayton, President Trump's nominee for the Director of National Intelligence, former SEC commissioner, currently serving as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. That nomination coming after talks collapsed in Congress about extending FISA because the Democrats upset about the president's appointment of William Pulte as acting DNI. So what's the problem there in the Senate with executing President Trump's agenda?
Well, lots of moving parts there. Obviously, Jay Clayton is a much more conventional choice for DNI. I think that was a smart move. His hearing is already tomorrow. Perhaps we could get him confirmed very quickly. That would help then pave the way for the FISA 702, authorization, which is very, very important. The Save America Act you're right, it's an 80-20 issue. Even in Democratic states, it's a popular issue. It's not the highest priority issue, but when given a binary decision, it's an 80-20 issue. The problem is we don't have 60 senators that will vote for it because Democrats will do nothing to advance that agenda. And we don't even have 50 votes on the Republican side because of a couple of specific things, particularly vote by mail is a stumbling block for a lot of Republican states. But so anytime we add Save America Act to bill that's hard to pass anyway, we probably make it impossible to pass. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying, Maria. I'm with you. We should put it on everything we can put it on, or at least have amendment votes so that people go on record and the American people eventually just demand that we pass Save America. And if we don't pass it at a federal level, it ought to pass state by state. And I think the vast majority of states would pass it.
All right. Real quick before you go, Senator, you are a member of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, as well as the others, the Finance Committee as well. You've got Kevin Warsh's Federal Reserve meeting beginning today, two-day meeting. What are you expecting out of Kevin Warsh?
Well, I expect a steady hand, but a little creativity, and that's what we've been missing for a very long time. Somebody who considers a larger array of factors when it comes to the economy and how that will affect policy going forward. So I'm glad to see him at the helm, and I look forward to good possibilities.
Senator, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Great to see you. Thanks, Maria.
Senator Kevin Cramer on Capitol Hill.